Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you all to the MEC. For most people here in the room, a place that we know from doing exams, but then usually not in this auditorium. Perhaps you know it from the TEFAF, the art fair that we have annually here in Maastricht. Some of you may work there or go as a visitor. But today we are here for something really, really special. Because it is because of the initiative of individuals that we are here, people who take a step and introduce something that wasn't there. Today it was, amongst others, the initiative of our rector, Professor Luc Soete, to introduce something which in the Netherlands is very uncommon. All universities on their annual anniversary award honorary doctorates, and he proposed, why not allow students to propose a candidate for an honorary doctorate, which I think fits perfectly with the ambition of this university to be student-driven in its education. I think we also need to be grateful for the initiative of the rest of the academic community to say, well, actually, let's do this. And then to all of you, students of the university, to take the initiative to start proposing names. People that you think deserve the honor of receiving a doctorate of your university. And all of you who made the effort today to travel in between the inner city of Maastricht and the Randwijk campus to meet here and listen to our special guest, Jimmy Wills, a person that we know all, and most likely already from primary school, from the initiative that he started as Wikipedia. Today we will learn that on the road to Wikipedia, a lot of other things happened before that all contributed one way or another. So I would like to welcome Jimmy Wills to the stage, to its biggest auditorium, to an event that would not have happened without student initiative. But also an event, Jimmy, that would not have happened if you, somewhere in your life, would not have started doing things that are out of the ordinary. So I'm going away and the floor is yours. And after about half an hour, I will come back to moderate a few questions that students suggested to ask to Jimmy Wills. Jimmy, the floor is yours.
Oh my, what a mess. I like this picture is really impressive because they photoshopped in some hair for me. Someone posted that on Twitter and I'm like, oh yeah, it's actually true. Okay, so thank you very much for having me. It's really a great honor to be here. I don't usually have people behind me when I'm speaking, so I'll try to remember this group back here from time to time. Yeah, so it's a great honor to be invited here. I'm not sure how it's done all around the world, but certainly in the United States, it's very common for an honorary doctorate to be given to someone for the great achievement of donating a lot of money to the university. I don't get any of those, but if they start allowing students to vote, then I might get a lot of honorary doctorates. So, because Wikipedia, of course, is very popular with students. But today I'm going to talk to you about failure. And the title of my talk, which you'll hear several times throughout the speech, is Failure. Jimmy Wills is good at it. And you can chime in with me when I say that each time if you want to, because it's kind of amusing. So the point of the speech here is to first start by talking about Wikipedia. So the original vision for Wikipedia was for all of us to imagine a world in which every single person on the planet is given free access to the sum of all human knowledge. And that's what we're doing at Wikipedia. This has a lot of implications. Every single person on the planet means that we're inherently global. We're in over 200 languages. We're in every country of the world. Free access means something very special. It means not just it doesn't cost anything to access Wikipedia, but everything in Wikipedia is freely licensed, so you can copy it, modify it, redistribute it. It's really there as a commons for people to draw on and use in whatever way they would like. And this project has become an incredible success. We have now over 32 million articles across 287 languages. And we have over 500 million unique visitors every month. So Wikipedia has really become a part of the infrastructure of the world in a way that's really kind of amazing to contemplate and to think about. So here we are. How did I get here? A lot of times when people think about entrepreneurship, the model they have in their mind is really the model of someone like Mark Zuckerberg, who basically didn't have too many failures in his life. He had one good idea, executed incredibly well on it, and at a very young age became incredibly successful. But that actually isn't a very normal path, and it isn't a very useful model, I think, for people starting out into their careers or thinking about doing something innovative or entrepreneurial. The real key to understand is failure. Jimmy Wales is good at it. I went through a lot of different projects, and I'll take you through some of them today to give you a taste of what it's like to be an entrepreneur in the real world. So early in my career, I was working in Chicago. I was a futures and options trader after having done some graduate work in finance. And I was a really keen user of the internet. I could program. I was doing mathematical programming for my work. And I suddenly had this brilliant business idea, and I noticed that people were using very inefficient ways to get food at work. They would fax an order to a restaurant. They call them on the phone, which was always a bit confusing. You could send someone from the office to go and get food, and I realized, wow, the internet is perfect for this. You could put all the restaurants on the internet, and you could order the food and have it delivered, and it would be much, much better. So what was the result? Failure. Jimmy Wales is good at it. In 1996, restaurant owners looked at me like I was from Mars. They had no idea what the internet was. They had barely heard of the web, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it was completely hopeless. The timing wasn't right. In fact, today, in Chicago, in New York, in London, in major cities everywhere, there's always a good online food ordering service that has exactly this. So it wasn't a stupid idea, but it was definitely at the wrong time. One of my next ideas was a site called 3 Apes. This was a search engine. I really still don't understand why this wasn't successful, because look at the slogan: type your search and the apes will find it. I mean, come on, it's genius. So the brilliant business idea here was pay-per-click advertising, but there would be 2 ways to pay. It was a very competitive landscape even back then in the late 90s. You could actually pay to advertise on the search engine, or you could send traffic to the search engine and earn credits, because I thought, well, this way, lots of webmasters, lots of bloggers and people will link to us to earn credit so that they can earn money credit so they can advertise. I thought, well, this is going to be really great. What was the result? Failure. Jimmy Wales is good at it. Chinese spammers took over the site within 3 months. I was getting a lot of traffic and a lot of very strangely worded demands for money. It was quite clear on the website, if you read it in English, that you wouldn't get actual money, but just credits towards advertising. But the whole thing was sort of hopeless. It didn't really catch on, and I was getting a lot of angry Chinese people, so that wasn't very helpful. So the next concept I had, Newpedia. Here, the brilliant business idea, and this is the predecessor to Wikipedia, is a free encyclopedia for everyone, written by experts. And what was the result? Failure. Jimmy Wales is good at it. I spent about $250,000 getting the first 12 articles through the process. I always joke that I still keep them by my bedside and read them every night. I will get my money's worth someday. But basically what happened here, same vision as Wikipedia, a free encyclopedia for everyone, the same type of inspiration coming from the world of free software, open source software. But I really didn't know how to go about it. I thought I had hired a PhD in philosophy to help me organize it. He argued correctly, based on what we knew at the time, that it needed to be super academic in order to be successful. It needed to be super academic, or people wouldn't trust it, which is, of course, an echo of sort of issues around Wikipedia today, which is people don't necessarily trust it. And so he was right, but in the end, he was wrong. I was wrong because the system was so oppressive to the volunteers. It was really, really hard to get involved, and it wasn't. So then, as I was realizing that Nupedia was a failure, thinking about shutting it down, not sure what to do, then I had a really dumb idea. A free encyclopedia for everyone, but let anyone edit it. Have no advertising, no sane business plan of any kind. Result? Success. Even Jimmy can do it sometimes. Wikipedia, of course, despite having no sane business plan, being organized as a charity, just asking the users for money from time to time, has become an enormous success all around the world. We're now the number 5 website in almost every jurisdiction around the world. And it's, of course, changed the face of knowledge forever. It had a really fundamental impact on society in the sense that the way we think about access to knowledge is very, very different. 30 or 40 years ago, you might hear something on the radio. You hear, oh dear, something terrible has happened at a magazine called Charlie Hebdo, which you've never heard of. And you think, oh, well, I don't know anything about that. And you might have thought, well, I should go look something up, but you didn't really have a way to do it. You just wait to see what came in the newspaper. Now you can easily go and read the entire history of Charlie Hebdo and all the cartoonists and all that, because you expect all that information should be there at your fingertips so that you can really get an understanding of what's going on in the news. So next concept I had, because I never stop, was Wikia search. So this is a search engine. It got a lot of attention when I launched it. This is the cover of Fast Company magazine. It says that I'm Google's worst nightmare. Not really sure if that's true or not, but my mother bought 10 copies. So this project attracted an enormous amount of attention, had a really brilliant business idea. It was basically to build on the success of Wikipedia. We would have all open source software, so it would be incredibly transparent. With Google, you have no idea how they rank things. We were going to be completely transparent about it. We give full editorial control to the users, so you could add links, edit links, sort links, change the way the algorithm worked by submitting code. What was the result? Failure. Jimmy Wales is good at it. We had to close the project during the economic downturn. It was actually coming along quite nicely. We had spent, I don't remember exactly, but about $1 million probably with the initial software development to explore the idea. It looked very promising, but then we had the entire the recession, sort of the banking crisis, and there was a period of time when it was very obvious that venture capitalists were not going to be investing in anything for at least a few years, and we needed to raise more money to continue the project. So even though it was promising, external events, the economic downturn, meant that the project had to be closed. So the encyclopedia was the start, but if you think about a library, it's much, much bigger. And this is the concept of Wikia. So the brilliant business idea of Wikia is to build on the Wikipedia model, but empower everyone to build the rest of the library. So it's every kind of book or work or whatever you want to do that is not in the traditional encyclopedia. If we think about this, the sort of the most popular sites at Wikia, which you might have run across, are typically in entertainment and gaming. So if you're into video gaming, you will have probably seen our Grand Theft Auto wiki or something like that. In entertainment, we have really huge fan websites about all of the major super complicated TV shows, so Game of Thrones, House of Cards, all these kind of TV shows, where the community of super fans comes together and they write things in incredible detail, episode guides, character analysis, speculative stuff about what's, theories about the show and things like that. And what's the result of Wikia? Success. Even Jimmy can do it a second time. Wikia is now the 17th most popular website in the US, similar ranking around the world. The company's doing incredibly well, continues to grow, and is an advertising-supported for-profit wiki. So it's not just, it's completely separate from Wikipedia, but it's my second sort of very successful website after many strings of failures. So what are the lessons that I've learned in this process? So One of the most important lessons is fail faster, and I wish I had invented that phrase because it's so brilliant. The idea of fail faster is, and this is what I find particularly with a lot of young people, and I actually went through this process myself, is you get some project or idea and you've got your dreams are pinned to it, and you're so emotionally invested in it that it's very hard to fail. You've put too much of yourself into it. And instead what you should do is small experiments. Minimum viable product is another kind of line in this area. It's to say, test it in the marketplace. Don't invest everything in it. Don't arrange your entire life so that this one idea you have is the only possible way to succeed. Do small tests and then fail faster and iterate very quickly. Don't tie your ego to a particular business. If I had tied my ego to the original design for Nupedia, for example, I would have said it won't work. It just failed, and I would have stopped there. But I didn't. I had to really rethink it and relaunch it in a completely different way. The thing is, real entrepreneurs fail and fail and fail and fail. And so the key is enjoy yourself along the way, and in the end, you will succeed. So this is really my core philosophy for how I do things, and it's something that I try to live up to. And in my case, I find it's actually very interesting because having done success, I get invited and people give me awards and honors, and it actually makes it emotionally, I feel like I'm young again in a certain way, because I'm at this point where it's very easy to be afraid to try something new. Like, why would I stick my neck out? I might fail again. Then I read this speech and I'm like, damn it. I have to try and fail again. So what's next? I'll never stop creating. I've got a new project I'm working on called the People's Operator. This is a mobile phone company. We're currently based in London, but we're launching in the US in the spring. And then we're going to expand through all of Europe and as many countries as I can do deals in to get us there. The idea of the company is quite interesting. So 10% of your bill goes to the cause of your choice. So whatever cause you choose, charitable cause, could be just about anything. And 25% of the company's profits, if and when we ever have any, will go to charity. And the real key to this is that our prices are exactly the same as everybody else. So, I mean, how is that possible? How do we afford it? Well, it costs subscribers no extra money because the money comes out of the marketing budget. Basically, the idea that I have here is that with if you think about something like Wikipedia, we never spent a penny on advertising. At Wikia, we've never spent a penny on advertising. The modern world of the internet means that things can spread by word of mouth. And if you're not spending all that money on advertising, you've got money to spend on something else, on something that your customers really care about. And that's the concept here. But that means that it has to spread through the community. So what we say to you is, well, who's your mobile phone company? Mobistar. We can say you can stay with Mobistar, and they'll spend a huge chunk of your money every month on more TV commercials, more billboards, more store ads, all that overhead of marketing, which you're paying for. Or you can switch to us, and we'll spend that money on something that you care about. And all we ask in return is tell your friends. Ask your family to sign up. Let people know about the product because it's something that's meaningful to you. And so we got to build it through the community, which is something I know a thing or two about. So I'm leading the digital strategy for the company, working on a new social networking platform that's going to compete head-to-head with the major social networking platforms you all know, but with a different kind of philosophy about what we're trying to accomplish. Up and running in the UK, unique proposition, expanding globally, mobile network that gives back. And who knows if it's going to be successful. We just did an IPO in London and raised some money. I'm trying to expand my team now. For me, it's very, very exciting, but new projects are always exciting at the very beginning. So either, you know, in 5 years' time, the next time I'm here in Maastricht giving a speech, I'll either have a funny story to tell about how stupid this idea was, or I'll tell you, even Jimmy can do it one more time. So that's basically my prepared remarks about success as coming from failure. And now we've got some time for Q&A. So thank you very much.
And that means that we're going to give the floor to a student who posted a question on Facebook and who was subsequently selected and who now has the honor to ask the first question. His name is Sebastian Tupi.
And he's a Mobistar customer. If I had any idea that you were going to be the first questioner, I would have picked someone else for my random audience member. So, great.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Wells. My question to you today is, basically, students find information on Wikipedia that are often better and clearer than in most textbooks. However, we're unable to use them simply because Wikipedia is not recognized as a valid academic source. Do you think there is a way to make the great content of Wikipedia more reliable, or even more reliable than it is right now, and finally available for students to use in a university context?
So I think that's a really great question, but I think what I want to do is tease apart two separate ideas in there. So one is the question of, are you allowed to use it? And the other is the question, are you allowed to cite it? So the question of, are you allowed to use it, is actually, it's not even relevant in the sense that you're all using it. I'm 100% sure. It doesn't matter what the professors say. You're all using Wikipedia. That is just a fact, because you find it incredibly useful, concise, to the point. It has good references. You generally find it of high quality, although, as we all know, it isn't perfect. The question is, should we get it to a point, or is there a reason to care about whether or not you're allowed to cite it? And in my opinion, the answer is no. I don't think we should cite Wikipedia. I don't think it's a goal for Wikipedia to be a citable source. And that's not a question about quality. It's really a question about what is the role of the encyclopedia in the research process, particularly at the university level. So I don't know what would be the the major Dutch cultural equivalent of Britannica or Brockhaus in German, but your big old-fashioned traditional encyclopedia. When I was at university, we would not have been allowed to cite Britannica, not because the quality of Britannica is not good, it is very good, but because, you're in university now, so that's not what you use an encyclopedia for. The encyclopedia should be there to help you get oriented, learn the broad background, give you some sources to dig deeper, and give you the tools you need to be able to go deeper, rather than be something that you just read and quote for your paper. I think that if you're, if we're talking about younger students, so I think if someone's 12 years old and they write something and they quote Wikipedia and they add a footnote, hooray, we should be cheering that on, because they actually bothered to just not cut and paste. That's great progress to cite your sources. But at the university level, I always give this example. Like, suppose you are assigned to write a paper in a history course about the Battle of the Bulge during World War II. So this is a very famous battle, but most people would say, yeah, I learned about that once. I don't really remember much about it. So you go to Wikipedia to get oriented. Well, that's not enough. If you're in a history class writing about the Battle of the Bulge, you really need to go and read 3 or 4 books. You really need to do some serious research. If, on the other hand, you're assigned to read a novel that's set in World War II and the characters are in the Battle of the Bulge, you could go and read the Wikipedia entry and then come back to the novel with a richer understanding and an ability to really get more out of the novel. But then when you write your paper, there'll be no reason to cite Wikipedia. You just use it as background information. So in general, I think if we really think through all the cases of how you would use Wikipedia, I don't think it's really necessary or that interesting to try to get it to be used as a source. But of course, use it every day. Why not? It's really awesome. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Jimmy, I'm going to do a quick test with the students here on the stage, because you referred to Christian being most likely from the Netherlands. How many of you here on stage are Dutch?
About half,
so you
less
are
than half, yeah.
Much less than half.
Yeah.
You're a guest at what we claim is the most international university in the Netherlands.
Right.
And it also actually means that of all the people who are going to ask questions, my guess is that none of them is Dutch. So
okay.
It's part of working at this university, studying at this university, that is a very international environment. Our next student to ask a question is Alexei. Alexei, please introduce yourself and your question.
Hi. I'm second year international business student, and I was actually searching on Wikipedia, and I stumbled on something quite interesting. I was wondering how one of your first projects, boomies.com, one erotic adult content website for men, leads you to actually create one of the world's biggest free encyclopedia in the world, and what provoked the shift from the basic need fulfillment to actually
Maslow's hierarchy.
truly intellectual cognitive thinking.
So the interesting thing about Bombus, so Bombus was a web directory. Basically, the idea, there was this concept of web rings where webmasters would get together and link to each other in a circle, and then you would do that. And there was a company called Web Rings. And we had a modification of the idea where you could come to our site and build an index of links on any topic. So we opened it up and we built indexes about, I remember one of them was about, we had one for every planet. So Mercury, Venus, back then Pluto was a planet, so we probably had Pluto. But then in a foreshadowing of my future work, I realized, like, for me to hire enough staff to build these indexes to everything, sort of replicate the way Yahoo used to be doing their web index, it wasn't going to be financially possible. But if there were a way, and again, this is the early concepts of thinking about open source software and community engagement, if there were a way to allow the community to come in and index to their favorite things and create lists of links, then that would be a low-cost way of doing it, and you might get a really great explosion. As it turns out, back in the early days of the internet, if you asked people to index things, the main thing they liked to index was porn. It is the internet, after all. And so I would dispute that Bomba, it gets characterized that way because there was, I mean, the mainstream media loves a juicy story. It was no more a porn site than Reddit is. Right, so it's a good example. So like Reddit, do people know Reddit? Yeah, so massive discussions and this and that and the other, and there's loads of porn in Reddit. But it's not a porn site. It's just like if you open a platform, that's what people like to do. You can also look up porn stars in Wikipedia. I mean, it's just people they're nonstop. So, so the connection was really that it was the first attempt I had of opening something up to let a community participate, and it didn't result in what I wanted. It resulted in a search engine that was very good for finding actresses and porn stars, but not much use for anything else. Wasn't my fault, but there you go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And actually for myself, when I read about this question for the first time, teaching entrepreneurship at this university, I felt it's a brilliant question. Because very often entrepreneurs need to do stupid things before they get to things that work,
Yeah.
and it may take a while, and some things that you did in the past may haunt you.
Yeah.
I've never come across an entrepreneur that has become really, really successful where it's not possible to say, yeah, but 20 years ago you did something that was questionable by today's standards. I would like to go to the third student with a question, Raluca.
Hi. It's very impressive that Wikipedia is so successful when you say it didn't have much of a plan. Moreover, it exemplifies a lot of the great things happening in business today. So it shows crowdsourcing works, it shows virtual offices works, it shows that motivation doesn't come from the paycheck and so on. What I wanted to ask you is what could a business, either established or especially a new one, learn from Wikipedia?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to be learned from Wikipedia on, really on almost every single one of those conceptual points that you hit. I'll just pick one of them, which is the money not being a primary motivator. So one of the things that has driven my management style of the community, to the extent that I'm a manager of the community, has been a full understanding that everybody's a volunteer. And so when everybody's a volunteer, you can't really adopt an authoritarian top-down structure. It just doesn't work. If you boss people around, they'll just leave. It doesn't make sense. They want to do what they want to do. You can guide them, you can coach them, they will, on their own, take on tasks that aren't necessarily that fun, that are necessary, because they're getting enough value and joy out of other aspects of it. So people will say, oh yeah, I spent 2 hours doing vandalism patrol, and it was really annoying, but now I'm going to go do this. But they know it's a part of the ecosystem, and so they're willing to help out. And I think what's interesting about this, and one thing that I've come around to, is that, in fact, the same principle holds true in really successful companies, that authoritarian, now you may have some hierarchies, of course, that's always necessary, but this kind of, I paid you, so I get to tell you what to do, results in very, very low motivation. People hate their jobs. It's no fun to work there. I've had jobs like that. I used to work in a grocery store where we were just told what to do, and if we didn't do the right thing, someone yelled at us, and it wasn't very fun. And instead, I think we should really think about for employees at every level of the company, not just realizing like certain executives are going to need certain things, but as much as possible, think about how do we make this job, as much as possible, it's never going to be perfect, something that someone would do anyway. And it's not really tied to the money. You say, actually, it's an enjoyable activity. That's a good way to spend my time. Not every aspect of it. But I don't feel like, you know, if it weren't for this paycheck, I would just leave this place. I hate it so much. And so for that reason, I think that businesses really should say, you know, what if we really thought about our employees as volunteers? What if we try to make their work interesting to them? What if we try to make their work creative? And then what do you get out of that? Well, most people immediately think of all the problems you get out of that, like, well, if I were a volunteer, I might just not show up a few days a week, right? I might go play with my kids, right? That's not really true, because if you were a volunteer in a position where other people depend on you, you would be just as reliable as if you're being paid. But what you do empower is a different kind of mindset, a mindset that says, look, we're part of a team trying to accomplish something here. Let's be creative about it. Let's not just drudge through some job because we have to. Let's figure out how to make it not drudgery. Let's figure out how to innovate. Let's try to beat our competition. That can be a fun game, you know? Sort of how can we be better than the other company? That's actually a meaningful and productive thing in human life, to say we've improved the state of the world in some way. So I think there's a lot that can be learned by looking at a volunteer culture, even in the paid culture.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And to shed some light on that, the people that work for you in your commercial enterprises,
Yeah.
if you would have to rate their commitment to making this work in comparison to the commitment you see from the volunteers with Wikipedia, is that comparable? Do your workers also, for example, put in a lot more time than they actually get paid for? How does it work?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that at the Wikimedia Foundation, we have incredibly mission-driven staff. So what we do, most of the staff are located in San Francisco. Most of the staff are technical, although there's other people there, you know, communications, legal, fundraising, and this and that. And we're hiring in a market that's incredibly competitive. We're hiring in a market where people could go and get a job at Google or Facebook. These are very talented engineers. And we try to pay fair market salaries. But we can't afford, we have no stock options, right? We can't afford to pay top salaries. But we pay fair market salaries because, by your friends. In that culture, Japan is the same way. There's a really strong concept that the best career path and what you should aspire to is to go to work for a big company. You should go to work for Hyundai, or you should go to work for Mitsubishi or something like this. And to go out on your own as an entrepreneur is something that your mother-in-law may find quite frightening and bad, like you're some kind of weirdo. And failure is regarded as a very shameful. And so it puts a lot of stress and pressure on these people, and it really makes a lot of talented people just don't go into trying to be an entrepreneur because of this kind of pressure that they feel. So that's a quite extreme example, but I think a lot of that element does carry over in Europe, that there is not the same as in the US, the same culture of risk-taking, of it being okay to fail. And that's reflected not just in social culture of like what your family thinks, but it's also reflected really in the institutional environment. So in Silicon Valley in particular, there's a whole ecosystem of angel investors, of venture capitalists, of companies that are entrepreneurial, groups of people, sort of social groups of people. So people come together, they start a company. It's not going so well, but they're going to events and they meet these other people who are doing this other company, and now they decide to join forces and do something completely different. And that kind of bubbling sort of activity where you can find an angel investor who can chip in, $100,000 to allow two people to take several months off and work on a project is really, really important. So the angel investor is really important, but also it's the culture that says, well, now you go to Google for a job interview and they say, well, what have you been doing? And you say, well, I was on this startup, did this, did that, this one didn't work out, this one we sold to that, it wasn't a huge success, but that's perfectly great and normal, and they think that's a wonderful job history, whereas in other places, it's like, you did what? You started 3 companies that failed, not so successful, eh? Which is just not the right attitude. So I think that this kind of thing, and this is why I talk about the failure thing, is to say, we really need to encourage this idea of saying, the next 5 years are going to happen no matter what you do. And so if you spend 2 years on a project that you enjoy, that's really important. And I would recommend people don't do a project just because you think it's going to make a lot of money, because if you hate it, but it's going to make a lot of money, that's a bad way to live your life. Instead, think something you think is going to make a lot of money or be a success, and maybe not as a money maker, but as a nonprofit or whatever, and that you enjoy. And then if you spend 2 years doing that and it doesn't work out, at least you had 2 fun years. And any sensible employer, any sensible next stage in your career is going to look at that and say, hey, that was a cool way to spend your time. And you're more interesting then, and you seem like a more dynamic person than someone who just took the first job they were offered out of university and did that. Everybody's life circumstances are different, so I'm not suggesting everybody turn down jobs and go be entrepreneurs right out of the box. But don't be afraid to be an entrepreneur. And in culture, in the longer term, let's value that. Let's value young people doing something that's a bit crazy, even if it doesn't work out, because otherwise you can't invent something like Wikipedia without failing a lot of times.
I would like to give the microphone to David Combroy, who also has a question.
Yes, thank you. My question to you, Jimmy Wales, would be the following. Well, taking into account that Wikipedia is the main source of information for millions, if not billions of people for everyday life in the world, and especially also in the news, as you mentioned in your presentation, to get the background information about a specific topic, there surely must be many interest groups or global players, by that I mean governments as well as private parties, which try to influence and manipulate what's written on Wikipedia itself. So, for example, in very delicate issues, political issues, such as the information war in Ukraine, for example, or Tiananmen Square in China, the pressure must be very high, not only to censor, but also to manipulate these sites through probably cyber attacks or even the people who admin the sites. So how does Wikipedia maintain its so valuable neutrality and impartiality, and how is it possible to protect, or do you believe it's actually a threat and we have to protect Wikipedia from these malicious influences? Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so that's a huge question with a lot of different parts, and I want to address a few of them, but I won't be able to give a complete answer because I could talk all day about it. It's one of the most important questions, I think. This will sound slightly immodest, but I think it's one of the most important social questions for all of us as a planet, because Wikipedia is crucial, but it's not just answering that question for Wikipedia, but in a broader sense for the entire internet and the entire information ecosystem, is how do we get to objective information without influences, undue influences by people who have motives other than the truth. So first thing to say is several of the examples you mentioned are probably the least problematic, ironically enough. And that's a funny sort of thing. The ones you can think of immediately are the ones where dozens and dozens and dozens of people on all sides of the question are very closely watching, monitoring, discussing, debating. So if we think about something like Tiananmen Square or the current Russia-Ukraine situation, the number of people who are focused on that topic and scouring all the sources and vetting and discussing and debating and so on and so forth is very high. So for, one side of that dispute to come in and say, oh, we're going to open up 4 Wikipedia accounts and try to do this, or we're going to open 400 Wikipedia accounts, we would notice that. The community would notice that. It would be fairly obvious, and it's just not likely to be very effective. So the areas where I worry about this happening are actually areas that are fairly obscure, so more minor things. And that doesn't mean they're necessarily unimportant. I know of a few cases where, so say a cult leader somewhere who's fairly obscure to everyone else, but is keenly important to a small group of people, where we have had very difficult battles, where a group of people comes in, they write on their own about some area that is of intense interest to them. Other Wikipedians come and say, this doesn't look very neutral, and then a big battle ensues, and it's very, very difficult because one side can be very, very persistent, and the other side is the Wikipedia community, who are also very vigilant and persistent, but may get exhausted about this one particular topic. So that problem is not horrible, but I do say that there are times when I know that certain Wikipedia entries are more favorable to certain people than they should be, because of people coming in and wiki lawyering, as we call it, and sort of coming up with every excuse not to link to this sort of negative information. It's not easy. I mean, I think the key pieces of it today are we have to have a really strong community who is really more committed to the vision of Wikipedia than they are to any particular topic. And a lot of good Wikipedians, sort of very experienced, well-respected editors, will say, look, there are certain areas that I'm very passionate about, and therefore I choose not to edit in those areas, because I know that I'm going to have an emotionally difficult time being neutral, and I'd rather just go and edit areas and sort of help out creating neutral information. And that's a good thing, generally speaking. But the things that I think we could do better, and I do think there are things we could do better, and I think there are software improvements that we could have to be able to better identify these kinds of cases, to be able to detect them algorithmically, to bring light on them. There's a lot of, we have a lot of tools already. So if somebody comes and they create 10 accounts and try to pretend to be 10 different people in a vote, they will almost certainly be caught. And all those accounts will be banned. And it'll raise a lot of alarm, and people will watch that area more closely. But there's a lot of more subtle difficulties that I think we could do a better job on, and the community needs better tools to be able to do that. So, yeah, it's a very important topic. Yeah.
In one of my classes, I use a short video clip of the young Steve Jobs that talks about Dare to Ask, and where he explained that he, as a high school kid, had the guts to call one of the founders of Hewlett and Packard, asking them for some spare components because he was hobbying and I needed some components. As a parent myself, I think I would have talked my kids out of doing that because it's not what you're supposed to do. But it relates back to the theme of your talk, dare to fail, fail often, fail early. We have the honor of having the board of the university with us, and as educators, we may need to find ways to allow all these students to fail a lot during their studies. For them to learn that failing isn't necessarily that bad.
Yeah.
So if you were to advise the board of the university on what we could do as an academic community to allow our students to fail, that also failing for assignments, courses, is not as bad as we usually think it is. What would be your advice?
Well, I mean, I can say this, the students have been lapping this up and loving it until you said that, and now everybody's very nervous about more failure in school. Doesn't sound like a great idea to them. But no, it's a very interesting thing. And so part of that has to do with, when I talk about it in the context of young entrepreneurs, I'm thinking a lot about the ecosystem around them and what happens if something doesn't work out. We can call it doesn't work out rather than failure, just to make it a little less emotional. So, I mean, there's some, no one's ever asked me, I mean, I literally never get a question I haven't been asked before, but this is a brand new one, so congratulations on that. So one of the things I would say is to have activities that the impact on your final grade or your final transcript or what happens at the end of university isn't devastated by a failure along the way. You have a safe space for projects to not work out. So some universities in the US, I think Brown University more or less doesn't have grades at all. It's sort of pass-fail, and basically pretty much you pass. But there's no like gradations within that. And so that gives the opportunity to say, well, you know, you did it. The other thing would be, and this can be very, I mean, it's different classes and different kinds of things will be different, but you can easily imagine where a project is judged not on whether it achieved the goal set out, but on whether it was a creative approach to it. And because that's really what you're looking for, is to say, you know, here's a group project to work on. At the end, we're going to see what everybody came up with. Some are going to be a lot better than others. We're not going to judge it on which are better than others. We're going to judge it on not just the effort that went into, but the cleverness and the daring that went into it. So that we say, yeah, well, your thing failed, but it was really cool that you tried it and it didn't work out. So that's all right then. It doesn't affect your grade in the class in a negative way. You won't win the prize, but you know, it doesn't affect your long-term record. And I do think there is a danger. I mean, for people, for a while I was a PhD student in finance. And the thing I found when I was in that world of academia, and it was at a good school, and your whole life and your whole mindset gets wrapped up in the achievement goals that are set for you. So publishing a paper in a top journal, getting your paper accepted to a top conference and that sort of thing. And I almost say it was almost like a cult in some respects. Like you put all your heart and mind into this one thing. And then when I left academia, I realized actually no one outside there has ever even heard of any of that or cares at all. And so there is a danger that we set, and this is, I don't know the answer, right? Setting really rigorous goals in a university means you have a very high quality program and you force the students to really put forth enormous effort to achieve something. But at the same time, what you may do as a part of that is start to reward people for just ticking all the boxes and sort of being a proper little soldier rather than being innovative. And that's a real risk. I think the Japanese universities have this problem. The Japanese school system has this problem in spades. I mean, it's a very intense process that, you know, people come out with very good educations, but they've had any risk-taking beaten out of them because they know the way to succeed is just to tick all the boxes and do all the things you're supposed to do. And so they don't go off and do some crazy thing that people go, wow, that's cool. And that's unfortunate. So academics is not the same as the real world, and that's not always good, but it's not always bad either. So,
Thank you for that. And now I would like to go to Shane White, who has our last question of today. Shane.
Hi, Mr. Wales. This is sort of like meeting a rock star or being able to talk to a rock star. But my question is, in line with the internship for Google, the social network for Facebook, and the Fifth Estate for WikiLeaks, when is Hollywood going to make a movie out of your life and Wikipedia? And if they do, when they do make one, would you prefer it to be a drama, a comedy, a documentary, or a tragedy?
Well, I am the Wikipedia guy, so I like fact-based materials, so I'll choose documentary. There actually has been a documentary, which I really, really liked the director, and he spent a lot of time with me, but then he lost financial control of the film, and they turned it into kind of it was going to be this really cool documentary about the community and about the people in the Wikipedia movement, who are so many different kinds of people, right? You'll get a very sort of straightforward university professor, and then you get this really kind of kooky, weird guy, and you get these geeks, and you get these, you know, it's a great community of all these different kinds of people who become friends, who probably would never even meet each other outside that. I thought, what a great premise for a documentary, because it would really help people to understand how Wikipedia comes about. And instead, once he lost control of it, it became rather a dull sort of talking head piece where they have, oh, critic over Wikipedia says this, and Jimmy responds that. And I just thought, well, that's every TV show that's ever been done about Wikipedia. It's not that exciting. So, yeah, I try to be as boring as possible, so no one want to make a movie about me. But I sometimes have failed at being boring. But yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
This was amazing. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think it was very, very inspiring. I think also for people who came here just to listen to and see the person of a website that they have used for years, in person, live, you know, in this little place called Maastricht. Thank you very much for sharing what you shared with us. I also would like to thank all the students who decided to make the effort. So let's give ourselves a big hand, an applause for being here. And for those of you who had not been to an ambassador lecture before, I would like to remind you that...
Woo! I'm so much for Rockstar. I'm still a clumsy geek at the end of the day.
It needs to be part of it. So it rocks, so that's part of it.
Yeah, Rockstar.
But about the ambassador lecture series, what we try to do as a university is bring in interesting people to talk. Sometimes there are ambassadors, and sometimes they really are very interesting. Sometimes we bring in other people. It is an opportunity for you to step outside your own program, the topic that you usually are busy with studying. And you go home and you heard Jimmy talk about what he does and how he got to do it. And I hope some, even if it's very little of that, will stay with you. And that when later you work and you think back of Maastricht, perhaps the only thing that you really cherish is this particular talk. But what I hope will also stay with you is the idea that if you're going to make something out of your lives, it is you who will choose your own destiny. Part of that is learning how to fail. Part of that is having respect for people who do things out of the extraordinary. And it could be a bunch of students who raise money to go and run the marathon on the Chinese Wall, or to start a project to help homeless kids in a city nearby, for example, in Liège. Acting on opportunities is something that the university is trying to infuse in its programs. And I already said, I don't do this for a living. I teach at this university. I happen to work for the Center for Entrepreneurship. And again, also in this ambassador lecture, apparently there was a fit between the speaker and my bias. But for all of you who would be interested in exploring whether, if you don't want to fill in your studies, perhaps you may want to fill in some of the early ideas that you have, that the university provides an environment where you can come and explore whether what Jimmy did, starting on something for which you don't know where it will end, whether that could be something for you. But again, Jimmy, thank you very much for being here and sharing your time with the students.
Thank you. Oh, wow. Oh. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Amazing. Very good. Thank you, sir. It's lovely.
And with that, we have come to the end of this presentation. Thank you again for being here, and I look forward to welcome you, or if it's not me, someone else, at the next session of the Ambassador Lecture Series.